A cruise line owned by Carnival has just announced a 5-step plan that's going to get us back cruising. Their plan is to have half of their cruise ships cruising by 2021, and although this hasn't come from an American cruise line, I think it gives us a really good insight into how we're going to be able to cruise again and what cruising is going to look like in places like the Caribbean and the Mediterranean. Phase 1 starts with cruise lines operating a few of their ships at around 50 to 60% capacity. The amount of people and the type of people that are going to be on these cruise ships is going to be dramatically different to what we're used to. At the beginning, it's going to start with people only from one or possibly a few countries on board. This is very easy if you're from Britain, if you're from Italy. Doing a cruise around the British Isles is pretty easy for us. But if you're from the US and you're looking to cruise to the Caribbean, this is going to be more difficult. There's various maritime laws in place that mean that you can't do a US cruise from the US to the US that doesn't stop in any foreign port. This does make it really difficult for people from America to get back into cruising using this phase 1 plan. I think realistically what will happen here is we'll probably see cruises that only visit maybe one country or a couple of ports. So you may be able to do Caribbean cruises in phase 1 that only visit Mexico. This does raise some concerns about the other islands and places where tourism is really heavily relied upon, but I think at least in stage 1, phase 1, we're going to see reduced countries visited on all cruises. This announcement has come from Costa Cruises, who are an Italian cruise line. Their phase 1 is planning to start in August and September, and I don't think we're going to see any cruises in August or September in America or other parts of the world. That said, there are some cruises starting in August in Germany on the German cruise line AIDA. AIDA are also owned by Carnival, so I definitely think it's worth us keeping an eye on these other Carnival brands to try and get an idea of what the American cruise line Carnival are going to do. Having said that, the German cruises on AIDA, they're actually not going anywhere. There's no laws that say that that's not allowed in Germany, so phase 1 is just a cruise to nowhere. It is likely that in phase 1 and these earlier phases, we're going to see shorter cruises. There were recently some guidelines in the EU that said that we should start with shorter cruises, 3 or 5 night cruises. That's not really a problem if you're cruising to the Caribbean or the Bahamas, because those itineraries tend to be shorter anyway, but it could take some getting used to, and I'm sure as we go through these phases, the itinerary lengths and the variety of itineraries will start to get longer and more. In phase 2, we'll likely see more cruise ships joining. This of course does depend on how well phase 1 goes. The interest in cruising for 2021 does remain high, but at the moment I think a lot of people are very nervous about cruising in 2020. We don't really know what the experience on board is going to be like. We don't know about things like travel insurance, so some people are just holding off booking cruises for now. That said, if we get through phase 1 and it goes well, I think people will be more interested in booking cruises for phase 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and beyond. An important thing to notice about phase 2 is this is when we'll probably start seeing cruises with people from different countries on board. This is going to be very limited, but it could be that cruises in Italy will now allow guests from France and Spain. That is the plan for Costa Cruises, and this is their plan. That said, I don't think we can take this as Costa Cruises are going to do this on this date and this is going to happen. I don't think we should do that because everything is changing so fast at the moment, but I think it does give us a really good idea of a process, and it gives us something to look forward to. I think a lot of people are thinking that we're going to have no cruises, then a big yes button is going to be pushed and everything's going to go back to normal. That is just not going to happen. The process to get us back cruising is going to be long, and it is going to be difficult. It's not what we're used to, but we will get back there, we will cruise again, and it will be so worth it. In phase 2, we'll probably have more choice when it comes to itineraries than in phase 1, but that said, we'll probably still have limited embarkation ports. On a lot of European itineraries, you can board pretty much every day, but I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. It's so much easier for a cruise line just to say, we're this cruise line, you embark here, you get off here, that's it. Phase 2 is likely still to have reduced capacity, and I think we're going to have reduced capacity on our cruises for the foreseeable future. Phase 2 is supposed to be around 60 to 70%, which gives people a lot of room to social distance, but I do think we may be expected to wear masks if social distancing isn't possible in places like the buffet. I have made a video about the future of cruising, so make sure you check that one out after this one, but for now we're going to move on to phase 3. Phase 3 will see the capacity increase to around 70 or 80% on some cruise ships. I don't think it's going to be across the board that all cruise ships carry 80% of passengers, but at this stage they're going to begin testing it, seeing how it works, and maybe having a few cruise ships with an increased capacity. There'll still be other cruise ships that are maybe 50 or 60%. Phase 3 is supposed to happen in November, which is very, very exciting for me here in the UK, because Phase 3 is supposed to be all European passengers can cruise within Europe, which is very, very exciting. Not much help for you guys over in America, Canada, Australia, but for at least us here in Europe, we should be able to travel relatively freely around Europe on a cruise ship. Phase 3 could look quite different if you're in America. It really depends on the CDC guidelines at the time, but it could be that there's a few specific places in the Caribbean, in the Bahamas, maybe in Alaska, Hawaii possibly, and within those places, Americans, Canadians, people from South America can cruise. It may not be that people from Europe can come across and do a Caribbean cruise yet, but hopefully, at least for people from America, in stage 3, which should be November, you may be able to do a Caribbean cruise. Fingers crossed. The most interesting thing for me about Phase 4 is that Costa Cruises are rumoured to be repositioning a cruise ship to the Caribbean. I think that's a very good sign that not only are European cruise lines trying to open in Europe, but they're also trying to go further afield and come across to the Caribbean. We definitely need a Caribbean cruise if you're here from the UK or most of Europe. The Caribbean feels a million miles away. Whether the Caribbean actually does happen for us in Europe at that time, I'm not too sure. I'm not going to hold my breath, but by this point we should have more itineraries available to us. There should be longer itineraries too, and things may start to feel a bit more normal. We should be at 70 or 80% capacity on cruise ships, which wouldn't really make a massive difference. So fingers crossed for some cruises in 2020. For Phase 4, we're looking realistically at December, and it seems strange to me that the Carnival brand would let their Italian cruise line go to the Caribbean without letting Carnival go to the Caribbean. So I'm really hoping that by the end of the year, we will see some Caribbean cruises, at least with Carnival and all of the companies that Carnival own. This of course does depend massively on coronavirus numbers. No one can predict that at the moment, but I do think this is a positive move forward, and I like to have a plan. I like things to be kind of scheduled. Even if it doesn't go to plan, I like the fact that the cruise lines are thinking and they do have stages to go through, because it feels like we're getting somewhere. Phase 5 should be in January 2021, and by this point Costa should have half of their cruise ships sailing, and I think it's realistic to assume that a lot of other cruise lines will have half or more of their cruise ships sailing too. I'm asked all the time when I think we will return to cruising. Nobody knows, and people who do say that they know are just making things up. I'm very optimistic that we'll see some cruises at the end of this year. I think they're going to be very different to what we're used to, and I think we're going to see more localized cruises, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm personally really up for a British Isles cruise, cruising to Norway, to France, to Spain, just staying within my little bubble. I think to do things like Caribbean cruises is going to be okay towards the end of the year, depending of course on the coronavirus numbers. No one can predict how that is going to go, but I'm holding out hope for something at the end of this year. I think going into 2021 we're going to have a long road ahead of us of a lot of changes, but we will get back to cruising and it will be fantastic. Please stay positive. I completely understand that it's very frustrating, there's no end in sight, and we just want to have answers, but at the moment they're just not there. I'm feeling very happy that cruise lines are at least planning, they're thinking in phases, and I think it shows that we're gonna get there. It does give me some encouragement. A massive thank you to the patrons and our new channel members who make this possible. I've just gained the channel member function, so if you'd like special stickers and gifts and priority chats in the live chat and all kinds of stuff, consider joining this channel. That's just in the description, and I'll see you in this video.